In Service to Love, the relationship podcast that helps you create more love in the practical day-to-day, centering connection in the life of the modern family with your host, therapist, mother, and artist, Randé Dorn. I always start laughing. All right, welcome everyone. This is the In Service to Love podcast. My name is Randé Dorn, and I'm your host. Today, we have a really special guest. His name is Chris Calandra. He is an AMFT. He's also a dating and life coach, and he's going to tell us about the therapy bro. But first, he's here because we're going to be talking about dating and relationships. And, as we talk, I'll let you know why I know him. Maybe it seems obvious. I need help with dating and relationships. But tell us about the therapy bro. Welcome.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Feels great to be here. The therapy bro is really just kind of, it's on socials. I have a website, therapybro.com. But it's all about and around men kind of, educating themselves a bit more on, feelings and emotions. And I feel like there's such a disadvantage that men have emotionally speaking, just because there wasn't really a platform for it growing up. Yeah. And so we don't know how to process feelings as well. And so either through tropes of like comedy or just me kind of using my own life experience or, things I've learned through, school and other things, whatever, just kind of putting that out there into the ether and, we'll build it. We'll build it up as we go, but we're at, the ground floor right now. So it's an exciting experience right now.
Oh, cool. All right. So tell me, with that segue in mind, I'm curious, what brought you to that? What brought you to creating the therapy bro? What brought you to becoming a therapist in the first place?
Yeah. So at 21, I came out here. I got sober. That's why I came out to LA. And the people that helped me in general, between the therapists and all the people that were at the facilities and everything like that, they changed my life forever. I'm still seeing my one therapist 9.5 years later. I'm obsessed with her. I love her. She's great. And so when I was thinking about career, what I want to do with my life, it took a couple of years, and the idea of wanting to help people was always kind of a natural kind of theme that I would come back to. So I thought first it'd be like career. Let me make people's dreams come true. Let me get into entertainment, that whole I had this very rose-colored, glasses kind of thing. And it just wasn't a good fit for me. I met a lot of great people though. And I went back to the drawing board and was like, I have some skill sets and some characteristics and some traits that I think would make me a really good therapist. Yeah. So if I can kind of give back to people in a similar way that people have given back to me, whether that's with addiction problems or trauma or relationships, dating, anything, and I want to kind of take that as my opportunity to do so. Right. So, and that's kind of where the therapy bro kind of stemmed off. It's actually funny because I had a friend at a birthday party. We were joking. So I'm very bro-y. I love sports. I like to go to parties, play beer pong while I'm drinking like a Celsius or a water or whatever. And so everyone's just like, I say, bruh, I'm just a bro. And so my friend had said oh, you're like the therapy bro. And I was like, I'm stealing that. I'm using that 100%. Nice. And so it kind of started getting ideas after that.
And then how did that segue into, into dating? But I don't know if that's a segue or if it was just, so just tell me.
Well, I think I've known, Ali Conti, who's one of the owners of Matchmakers in the City for, quite a number of years. I think she's incredible. Her sister Christine is incredible. And I was honestly just kind of going to them, and I met with Ali just being like, hey, I would love some information on how you guys got started. You guys are so successful. And so I started talking about the therapy bro, and I started talking about, kind of my perspective and what I'm looking to bring to things. And, we kind of just figured out within that meeting, hey, this could be a good fit for you to come on and work on the team. And have you thought about date coaching or relationship coaching and life coaching? And I thought about life coaching for sure, but not necessarily, I guess, branching out specifically into dating. And so then it became could I do this? Let me see. And then came up with, really thought about it, and it kind of just made sense to me to do. So, yeah.
And so what do you think, segueing into that, what do you think are perhaps the rules around dating that people should know?
I feel like this is going to sound interesting. I think the rule to dating that I like to follow is to not follow any of the rules of dating. I have to wait 3 days to text them back or her back. I can't respond to them immediately because it shows too much interest. All these different kind of things we've heard over the years, I think is really detrimental because it's just kind of creating this kind of facade around you, but isn't really you. So my big kind of thing that I love to talk about and that I love to really live by is just like loving yourself, knowing who you are, dating yourself. Because like we've heard this phrase. I mean, I don't know how many times you've heard it, but like I'm looking for my other half.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that just means like there's half of you that you feel is missing.
Right.
And so all you can really contribute if you're looking for another half is 50% of love to be received and given. But that other 50 is still there. So it's just like a shadow of like your insecurities, your fears, your doubts, your baggage, your trauma from past experiences.
Sure.
So for me, the more you date yourself, the more you do for yourself, the more gratitude that you'll have for yourself, which will then turn into self-esteem and more self-love. So that like 50% that you were kind of looking for, you're at, will eventually kind of climb up to 100%. And then to whole people,
right,
which will create healthy dynamics, healthy boundaries, healthy communication, all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So I think when the most important rule is continue to get to know yourself and prioritizing yourself while you're dating other people.
Right. Do you think, this idea of if I'm 100%, I'm looking for someone who's similar to me? Do you find that people are finding more people who are kind of like the opposites? I mean, I definitely believe that we have to be very similar in terms of our values, but maybe in terms of, like our interests or our family dynamics, like, is there maybe a right combination that we're looking for, even though 100%, like what, ideally might that look like?
I think it's interesting because I don't believe in like one soulmate out there. I think that you can make it work to varying degrees of success with various different partners. So I think it really just depends on how well you know yourself, what you're looking for, like having the understanding of all those things. And then, kind of having the tough conversations of like, well, this, like if this value doesn't match up with mine, how big of a deal breaker is that?
Right.
Versus like, well, we have different interests and how important are these interests? But like the more you know about yourself and the more that you know and have experience with other partners, the more you can kind of go in being like, oh, okay, no, I can make this work. Like somebody doesn't need to love X, Y, and Z for me to want to be with them. But I do find very much what you said, like values are so crucial to be lined up in general.
Yeah.
And if you don't, there's going to be a lot of resentment.
Right.
Like,
I was going to ask, sorry, what do you think in terms of people looking for this combination, like why is it so hard for them to find that common? Like what is it that maybe they're missing?
In terms of I don't know if there's a missing combination. Well, I'm sure there is a missing combination. Look,
we've all found it.
We wouldn't have. There'd be a lot more, happy marriages and happy people in general. I think some of it's like we're kind of following this Hollywood fairy tale story that we've kind of been fed. I remember writing a paper about this in college about like how Disney like just royally screwed up my whole generation because it was like you meet somebody, you just lock eyes with them, you don't really have a conversation. You fall in love. You battle an outside entity one time, and then you live happily ever after, and you go off on your magic carpet. And I love Aladdin, so like, don't get me wrong, like that's my shit. But like, it's just it sets up such like a like a ridiculous frame of mindset and mentality. Like I remember getting into arguments with past partners when I was younger, and being like, "Well, this is over." Clearly. And it's like, whoa, what? It's like, because my parents didn't fight either. Like they never fought. They were very careful about if they were going to argue, it was never around us. So like, I saw this perfect marriage, and all these, dynamics where like no one's really fighting. So the second that I started fighting with somebody, I was like, well, it's got to be over.
Yeah. Are your parents still together?
I had 37 years now. I'll be 38 in June.
Like, what do you think their secret is? Have you asked them? Not because you're like, look, I didn't see you guys fighting. So like, what was happening behind those doors?
I think a big part of it is for them, it's a friendship, like a real bond and kinship within that, that I feel like kind of gets missed from other people. And I think a lot of that is probably due to the fact that I'm kind of just speaking for them at this point and assuming things. But I think that they really built like a very strong emotional foundation from the get-go. And I think that that's, for me, it's something that I'm really looking like to do now in relationships, if I'm building relationships, is really set that emotional foundation, because it's so much sturdier than if you build a physical one. Like you build something that's physical, and we've all been there. It's all hot, it's passionate, it's fun, it's hot, it's fiery, all that kind of stuff. And that's great. It's important to have passion with the relationship, but it can crumble if you start to, notice certain like emotional things you don't like about the other person, or like if you're hanging out too much with somebody before that emotion really starts to take root, then quirks or flaws or different traits that you could usually live with, maybe if you took some time to actually get to know the person. Now it's like, oh, well, their nose looks weird, so I'm out. Or like, like, oh, like, well, they do this like weird thing with their face, like twice, and it's like, all right, well, I'm out. I can't do that.
Right.
And I feel we've all been guilty of that to a
Yeah.
degree, where you just kind of have that, like, as they say on Love Island, the ick moment. Like, it gives me the ick. And I think that's just from like being close together physically too much before getting to really build that emotional.
Sure. I mean, I'm wondering if, to your point, it's like, well, then what are maybe the real ick moments we should be looking for versus like, okay, they have a tick, or, they're a little untidy. Like what are the things that maybe what we might consider like deal breakers, but.
Yeah. I think it's a great question. And again, this feels like a cop out to every answer. It really is though, like getting to know you first and what is important to you. Because I think people can lay out like a list of things. Like I think there is a list of obvious things where, it's like, oh, if this person behaves in this type of way, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
But most people aren't going to be on the kind of like extremes and the outliers and things like that. So it really just becomes, what's important to you, what can you kind of, work with or manage with or deal with in general. I think something important for like women, and I'm going to talk more about heteronormative values because just where I kind of live comfortably.
Yeah.
But women for partners and men, I think there needs to be a greater amount of patience and understanding and empathy towards the fact that men don't have the same emotional education that women do, just because we didn't have the platform for it and it was never taught to us. So like the ability to process feelings or know what feelings we're feeling we're like clueless to it. I had my last partner had asked me, he's like, what makes you feel seen? And I thought it was a beautiful question.
Sure.
I had no way to answer it. Right. I had no idea. I was like, great question. How about you? What about you? And she had all these different ways that it's like, this is how I feel valued and seen and heard and understood. And I mean, it was great for me. It was like a cheat sheet where I was like, this is how I can like literally just validate and make my partner feel really secure and happy and safe.
Sure.
But I couldn't do the same for her. And it took a lot for me. I was like racking my brain around it and trying to figure that out. And so
Did
something
you figure it out?
To a degree, I think I'm still working it out and figuring it out. I mean, for me, acts of service is a huge thing, but I also think that's kind of a blanket statement. So, but I think women having that understanding, because like guys, like largely don't want to hide their feelings. They're not trying to like keep things from you. Right. It's just we don't know how to open ourselves up, which is why when I don't know if you've ever had this in a partner. I've done this plenty of times because we're idiots. Guys are morons. We're like little puppies. When like we finally like find somebody that we can like open ourselves up to, and we find that vulnerability and we're comfortable with it, we don't have a filter. We no longer know how to filter stories. We're just like, I'm going to tell you everything. And that's why you tell stories to your partner about your ex-partner like an idiot. You're just like, oh my God, this time I went on this date. And they're like, I don't want to know about this. This is really disrespectful. Like, why would you even? And it's like, oh, like, I'm just done. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't have this boundary. I don't know what this is. It's never been created for me.
That's fascinating.
So there's so few people, I think, within a guy's life that has that complete confidentiality, maybe his best guy friends, but the best guy friends will talk about that kind of stuff all the time. Yeah. So I think that there needs to be some like patience and understanding with that. Sure. And then from guys, just the understanding of like reassurance is powerful. It's so crucial. Yes. And how often we need it. Yes. And like in the different ways sometimes, and it really is like that my partner giving me that answer of what made her feel seen and validated and understood and like secure. It was the greatest thing I could have ever like been given. That was because I have a roadmap of how to like make her feel safe. And I feel like guys just don't know what questions to ask. But if you ask that question as a guy, if you ask that question to your partner, like what makes you feel seen, and they answer it, most people do know. I've found. Maybe I'm the weird one. Yeah. Probably. But they'll give you that roadmap, and then you can get curious about it. If someone's like, oh, like words of affirmation really mean a lot to me. It's like, well, can you give me an example of what that looked like? Was there a time where a partner did this, or that maybe I did it for you that made you feel really secure and safe and seen? That way, when a woman's asking their partner like, oh, like, hey, like, where were you tonight? The guy isn't going to necessarily interpret that as, oh, she's like hounding me all day, or she's nagging me, or this, or like, why didn't you do this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he doesn't necessarily have to take that as this like kind of like
nagging.
Yeah, which because guys will be like, girls are crazy, and I just don't subscribe to that. Like, women are not crazy, men are not like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
We're just different.
Yeah.
And the communication between the two is always just a bit different. So just
right.
getting in sync with how your partner communicates
Right.
is, I think, one of the most important, if not the most important thing outside
Sure.
of like dating you and, you know, knowing, like having your values match up.
Right, right. Well, I mean, and there's this, I mean, what I noticed, right, there's this dynamic of like this push-pull, or who's chasing and who's running away. And, you know, at the same time, right, that idea of being pursued and pursuit. And it's like, well, if you're pursuing someone, then the other person is running, right? Versus like, what does it mean to not necessarily stand still, but like move in the same direction together? But I think to your point of communication, it gets sticky, right? In terms of figuring out like, well, what dynamic makes sense to us. And I think to your point, you're saying a lot of wonderful things. There's a lot of people who don't have necessarily the skill set, right? To say, okay, you know, when you're saying like, how do you, in terms of being seen, like, what does that look like for you? And it's like, if I give you the roadmap, is there an expectation? And maybe there is as a woman, is there an expectation you're now going to actually follow the map?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to talk about also frequency. It's like, well, if I tell you words of affirmation, is that like every day, every 5 minutes, every month? You know, it's, you know, I think sometimes there's this expectation of like, well, I told you once, right? The assumptions that we do, right? Within our relationships. And, you know, trying to figure out, again, to your point of like, what's the dynamic within your particular relationship, and being as clear as possible about what you need. And on the other side, the partner saying, well, this is what I can do. And this is what I can't do. This is what I don't want to do. And I think that's where it starts to get hard, because we don't want to lose, you know, this beginning partnership, or we're 5 years in or 10 years in. Who wants to start over, right? Because everyone tells you sucks out there. You know, and so sometimes, you know, it's like this idea of vulnerability of I mean, I work with my clients a lot of like, well, can you be honest about what you don't want to do? Like, if this is the argument that you're having every time we meet, then maybe one of you is not telling the truth about what your needs are, or about what you're willing or not willing to do, right? Because it's like, all right, I'll try a little bit just to kind of shut you up, for lack of a better word. But I won't necessarily, you know, like I'm not doing it to the point where that partner feels reassured. Because they can feel the energy in which I am, you know, doing the task, right? That I'm doing this partnership, that they can feel that it's like begrudgingly, right? As opposed to like, you know what, I'm not going to be begrudgingly, but I'm just going to tell you no. Makes me think. I was ending a relationship anyway, but I remember at one point why it kind of ended was that I was sitting in his place and he was like running late, and so he was gonna take a shower, and he was like, "Can you make?" And it was his place, and he was like, "Can you make me a sandwich for lunch tomorrow?" And I said, "No," and he was like, "It's just." This is like a bologna sandwich or whatever with some mayonnaise. And I was like, no, this is not my place. If we were at my place, I might consider making you a sandwich. But no, I don't want to make a sandwich for you. And I know then he went into the shower. He was like, okay. And then he came out. And I know he was thinking about it, because then he started smoking. He went to, and smoking is a deal breaker. That's partly why we're not together. But anyway, he went to the door and he started smoking. He was like, so, like, what's going on here? Like, what are we doing? And I'm like, and I kind of said, I was like, well, I mean, we're not building a life together, but I don't know. And then of course I'm laughing, but it's really sad because I was so mean.
Wait, what just happened? This conversation went from, 0 to 1,000.
I know.
It was like, we went from like, hey, could you do me the sandwich? Like, make this sandwich for me. Which, listen, I know the connotations with that specific statement. But then all of a sudden it's like, well, we're not building a life together. It's like, whoa, we all jumped so far together.
I know. I'm intense. The backstory about that is that I was going to tell him that day. I was like, hey, this doesn't seem to be going in the direction.
Okay. So you already knew in your head.
I already knew, yeah.
Let me just go for the kill shot.
Yes. But I was so nonchalant about it. I was like, oh, I mean, we're not doing that thing we had been talking about doing for the last month.
Yeah.
And there's no sandwich, so. So anyway, I say that to say it is okay to say no to sandwiches.
It's do you know about the hero complex?
Tell me more.
So the hero complex is people that sacrifice everything of their own accord and their own well-being for the sake of other people, whether that's just so that they can feel validated or so that the other people can feel seen. A lot of codependency comes with that.
Yeah.
A lot of anxious attachment as well. But what that leads to is
I feel so seen right now.
so much resentment towards these people
that
have not asked you to do any of these things.
Right.
They'll just say I'm gonna be crazy stressed today. I gotta do this, I gotta do this laundry and then I gotta do these groceries and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, if you make this plan of action, all right, well, I'm gonna do the groceries for them and then I'm gonna come home and at the very least that'll be off their day.
Yeah.
But then they're just like, oh, thanks. I appreciate that. And it's not maybe it's not exactly the response you wanted or whatever. It's little kind of things like that. Or just something in the grocery store pissed you off. Oh, well, it's their fault because I'm doing this for them. It's it's all these little things in your mind that nobody asked for, but you were taking it upon yourself. And it just leads to this huge amount of resentment and fatigue. So it's important to say no. It's important to set boundaries, especially very early on. Crucial to do so because it's not it's not this feeling of, it's not rejection. It's really just setting this hey, I understand where you're coming from. This is important to me. You were important to me. And it's also important that I handle this right now because this is a priority.
Yeah.
I need to be able to get my work done or do this thing or, shoot my content or whatever it is. I got to go golfing. I love golfing. I have to play golf with my buddies this weekend.
Right.
But that doesn't invalidate your experience. But let's do it early next week.
Sure.
But this isn't. So saying the art of saying no is very difficult, but it's also, it's very difficult for some people.
Yeah.
Myself included. But once you kind of get a handle on the importance around it and you start practicing it, it gets less uncomfortable.
Yeah. There's what came to mind, this idea of this radical honesty, in terms of, again, really owning, I talk a lot about this, owning your yeses, but you own your yes so that you really can own your no.
Yeah, I love that.
But, I'm sitting here as you're saying that, and it's what's the hope in finding a relationship knowing potentially I'm saying no so often that I might have to be dating for a while to find someone? What's the narrative that maybe we should hold around dating to know that eventually we'll find, like you said, our person, but there's many of them.
Yeah.
But you understand what I'm asking.
No. Yeah. Dating can be exhausting, especially when you have all these other responsibilities in life. Adult life is full of responsibility.
Yeah.
And everybody has their jobs and their careers and their different things that add to it. So dating can be a full-time job if you want it to be, or if you if that's a goal and priority for you. I think that dating just needs to be considered fun. It just needs to go into the fun category. There's so much pressure that we put on ourselves to find this perfect person that doesn't exist. Nobody's going to be perfect for you. I'm sorry. Listen, your Prince Charming might be out there. Your princess might be out there. Whoever, your perfect ideal person.
Yeah.
They might be out there, but it's
just
not.
So I'm perfect. So if whoever is my person.
I am super not at all. I'm very crazy and flawed. So I'm sorry.
I'm crazy, but I'm perfect and crazy.
No, but that ideal person, right? That ideal person exists, but not in the way that you drew it up. It's like anything else with life. It's when I was 13 years old, I wanted to be shortstop for the New York Yankees. Yet another year where I have not gone to the New York Yankees to play shortstop. I don't think it's in the cards for me. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be speaking on a podcast in Los Angeles, California from Connecticut as 9.5 years sober and a therapist and a life coach and talking about dating. but I'm so happy and I feel so grateful for it. So like the script is never exactly how you want it to be. It's important to know what you want, but then also being willing to really work around what life kind of throws at you and the people that puts you in it, because not every person is going to be a yes or a tons of time or, you know, whatever. One of my favorite sayings, I was told this in like the 12 steps by an old sponsor, which was God has 3 answers. Yes, not right now, and I've got something better. And I think that that's just a great way, like excluding the whole like spirituality of it all. I just think it's such a great saying in terms of what you can, how you can approach dating.
Right.
Like, yes, this is really cool for like this moment. Like, oh, like not right now. Like I need to figure out other things. There's no one really in my life that I'm really interested in. Okay, great. Be interested in yourself. If there's nobody really out there and you know, you're putting feelers out or you're doing things, there's nothing out there, just keep dating yourself.
Yeah.
And then that person will come that will eventually kind of make it ideal and it will make it kind of work.
Right.
But like you'll find more of the people that you actually want by finding out what your no's are, finding out what your yeses are, how you can kind of compromise within things and knowing yourself more. And I think that's really important. Also, the grass is always greener, like social media apps thing is so crazy now.
Yeah.
And that leads to so much drama. And
absolutely. I mean, that saying, what came to mind is that more of an abundance mindset way of thinking, right? It's like the not now, and there isn't really a no, but that there's always more or something better, or, you know, you just have to be patient and wait, versus like a lack mentality, which I think, you know, like we can come to, there's never any good people out there. This is really difficult, right? Like I think that all is coming from that place of lack versus abundance. I'm curious, you know, again, going back to how to structure this in some ways. It's like, if I'm dating, like, what am I like? There's this idea of like giving people a chance, but like to what degree, right? Like, like, like how, I don't say how open should I be, but like how attracted do I need to be, right? Like, do I need to find them like
drop
hot,
dead.
right? Like, do I need to find them just like, okay, because I think there's I think where I not struggle, but in my mind, there's this idea of like, well, they're interesting people. I love having conversations, but I'm not necessarily physically attracted to them. Is that supposed to come, or is like I'm doing it all wrong?
Well, I think it's interesting. I'm gonna answer your question by starting backwards a little bit.
Okay.
So, and I don't know if this is you, so tell me yes or no.
Yeah.
You have this kind of more, and this is more of a general you, but like having this like very euphoric experience with a partner, you jump all in, like you're like, oh, this feels so good. Like I need a hit of this person. No, and I'm the same way, right? It happens, you know, but it's so interesting because the same, like from a biochemical place, the same receptors that go off in your brain for love are the same ones that go off for cocaine use or other amphetamines. So, you know, and then love can really be misinterpreted, misconstrued for lust and like the sexual like kind of aspect of things in the reward center of the brain. So you get that hit, you overlook a lot of red flags, and you also push past a lot of any kind of boundary setting that you ever might have been able to you know, endure. So then, or, you know, create together. So then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is really toxic as hell and I can't, whatever. The difference is, it's like you're looking at an ideal partner through the lens of how like a cocaine addict is looking through like what a normal day should be like happiness while on cocaine. And it's like the happiness within life is going to come, or the contentness in life is going to come on a string of really good days in a row, not the once every couple days, super high peak, like, oh my God. So I say all that to say, like, if you are on a date with somebody and your values are more in line and you're enjoying them, but you're kind of like, something missing. It could be your brain not used to normalcy.
Right.
You know, and it could feel super like boring or vanilla. And you're like, I'm not fucking, this person? Like, I'm not just, I'm going to be wrapped in like my footy pajamas by 6 p.m. every night, like eating a TV dinner. Like there's no way this person could, this isn't going to be fulfilling.
Yeah.
And that could be true. And
Sure.
I'm very guilty of all the things that I talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of experience with messing up, making mistakes. And hopefully growing from them to a decent amount. But it's kind of getting out of that mindset. So I think making sure and ensuring first and foremost that like, while having this kind of playfulness of a first date, you can at least vibe of, okay, does this person seem to have somewhat similar values as to what I have? Like, can I enjoy a conversation with them? Okay, cool. Like, let's see. Like, where, and that's kind of where like the funness and the playfulness of dating can kind of come in, where it's not as dire of, okay, well, but if I give this person another date, then that's one less date for another potential partner that would actually be like my perfect match. Because
that's lack too.
Yeah, but there's so much pressure. Again, it's just like, and so like you'll look at all these different things where, and again, I'm like, time is precious. So I understand wanting to like divvy your time up very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Intentionally.
Yes, thank you. Like lining your time up with intention is very important and very valuable. I get that. But I think being able to kind of do that while also being like playful about it, or having this more like, like whatever's going to happen, like I'm going to be good. Like, it's, like there's not just one person. There's not just two people.
Sure.
Los Angeles itself has like 7.5 million people.
Wow. Yeah.
In it. Like there's going to be multiple partners for you to choose from that are also attracted to you, that you are attracted to, and that you can get along with. Like there's just, statistically speaking, it's going to work out. They might not look exactly like what you think, and they might do exactly what you thought your partner would do, but they exist. And so just having that kind of mentality, like, all right, cool. Yeah.
Right.
I had my one of my first supervisors for therapy tell me this. He was like, there's 7.5 million people in Los Angeles alone. Like, you need 20 of them to like you enough to see you as a client, or, as a therapist. I'm like, 20 out of 7.5 million. I like those odds.
Yeah.
Like, I like those odds. That's So anytime I've gotten discouraged in that kind of way, and I think it can be absolutely translated into love too, where you just go on a string of dates that don't really mean anything, or it's like, oh, what the fuck, like whatever. Like just having that reminder of like, no, there's a lot of people out there, and just keep learning about yourself and keep dating yourself and having fun with it.
Yeah.
And then eventually, like, you will see a person that you will see potential with.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense. And I'm thinking, I mean, I've said things to my clients as well, because I pretty much only work with artists and art makers. And it's like, keep your excitement in your work and not necessarily at home. But, I understand like that hit that you're talking about, because it's like, I was a dancer. I was so it's like, you're standing on stage, anything can happen. It's, it's right now, it's still dark, but the lights are going to go on, and then you're just like in it. Right. So it's like, even in terms of our work as creatives or as art makers, like we're constantly chasing a little bit of that high. And then, of course, when we're potentially in partnership, it's like, like, you're interesting, and I mean, and I'll say, for me personally, and I can ask you this as well. I think it was one of the questions of like, as a therapist, I find it hard to date, because I'm talking to interesting people all day long, right? And because they're my ideal clients, so they're artists and art makers, and they're like thinking of like just these crazy ideas or these things that they're making. And so I'm on the high, and on the kind of loop that they're on, right? Of the ups and downs of like, I just sold this thing, or I just booked this gig. And so like, I'm in it. And then I like go on a date, and they're like, I like, so I'm like, oh, what do you got going on or whatever. And, and even in terms of, it still could be interesting, but even the way they share it, right? Because I also, I'm hanging out with a lot of like theater folks. Yeah. So when they know how to
perform, they know how to present,
right?
They know how to be excited. They can show that. Absolutely.
Exactly. And so I'm like, oh God, how do I find, right, like the balance, right, of not necessarily having all of that kind of constant, nervous system excitement happening.
And that's the thing too. Like I feel like I talk shit about like the euphoric feeling. Like that's not a bad thing necessarily. Right. It's like making sure that your behaviors don't change or alter too much when you do get that feeling, so that you maintain within your own self and that you keep healthy boundaries with a partner. Like, if you get the euphoric feeling, like, awesome. Like, that, there's a reason for it. It doesn't have to just be, it's toxic love bombing, which it could be, but it doesn't always mean that. So that's where, like, hey, like, X, Y, and Z are very important things for me. I am not moving my schedule around or, kind of rushing my day or whatever just to ensure that I can get another hit of seeing you or being with you at the risk or the expense of my own stuff. So it's like setting those very early on, and then you can take all the hits of it you want, because that's like, that's like being able to, socially drink or socially, smoke weed or do drugs or whatever you want to do.
Right.
Like, so I think I want to make sure that that's like, if people feel that that rush and that excitement, that they're not like, oh no, I'm in trouble. Like, this person's bad news. It's like, no. Just like, it's good. It's okay. And it's also okay if you don't have that feeling. Because again, if you're around performers and you're around people that know how to tell a story and know how to really kind of carry that, like, charisma and room and you don't necessarily have that, or like, there's exciting shit that happens in entertainment. Like, I just sold this, pilot for $2.5 million. Like, that's incredible to hear. And then you go on a date and he's like, well, yeah, I work at a 9-to-5 job. I sell office supplies. So it's pretty cool. Like, I got some new pens in the other day. And again, like, no disrespect to anybody that has a more normal 9-to-5 job, but I can understand from your perspective being like, that's not as exciting. Like, it's
well, and to your point too, I think about people who have jobs like that, and it's like, they need love too. Right. And what is the
the normies out there? I know.
Sorry, I sound so awful. Just sorry, people. No, but I think about the person who has that job or who's working at Trader Joe's, or, and I say that in the sense of like someone who's just hardworking, who's consistent, who may be doing something for, 10, 15 years. And they are also looking for relationships. And so I'm wondering, like again, how do we find our match in that when, and partly I'm thinking it that way because I do have clients also who are looking for relationships, right? But they are also in this like other financial category. They might be in this other, not only economic, but educational category. And do we need to look at those things as well? And maybe that sits within our values, but like, how does that Trader Joe's person find? Do they need to only find someone else who works a 9-to-5 job? Just someone who's in the arts, who's just sold something for $2.5 million? Like, do they only need to, date people maybe within those realms? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think, again, it really, comes down to like lived experience and what the person's values are. Like, I've heard actors talk about, they've tried to date, the regular person, the non-entertainment field person, and they struggle greatly with the lifestyle, or they struggle greatly with, something that like other creatives wouldn't understand. Like, I would never, like, I've dated actresses before who are like, if I kissed somebody on screen, like, how would that make you feel? And I'm like, it would make, like, I understand it. Like, logically, I'm like, yes, this is your job.
Right.
But like, I don't like that. And it's like, it's like, I'm not going around kissing other people. And it's like, well, okay, that gets into a whole other argument of like, well, this is my career and this is art, and I don't view it like that. And it's like, okay, so maybe for me, it's just best not to get involved with somebody who might have to be being romantic and intimate on screen with somebody. That might not be good for me.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that somebody else within that realm or within that sphere isn't a good match. So I think it just depends on what you're comfortable with, again, knowing yourself in that way. And then just like, being open to stuff. Like, who knows, like the Trader Joe's person, like, if you just look at it from that perspective, like the normal job or whatever, it's like, well, maybe they have something really cool going down. Like that makes them, but we're so quick to judge off of like status specifically, and especially in LA. It's like, well, what do you do though? And what can you get me? Like, what can you provide me?
Yeah. LA is difficult in some ways. I mean, I don't want to sell that particular story that like LA is hard to date, but I do find, that many people here haven't been born here, right?
Mhm.
Like which mean I say that to say they've come here to pursue
Yes.
something. And because they've put everything on the line to
Mhm.
pursue something, they want to obviously make that work.
As a
So there's
priority, yeah.
right. So there's like a kind of potentially a tunnel focus.
Mhm.
There may be a time constraint, like I have to be successful at a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
particular time.
Mhm.
And then, and so then it's like my relationships are with people who are, within that field,
Yep.
within that dynamic, right? And so it can be hard. I mean, I think even in terms of like making friendships or even creating community, it's like, well, I have to prioritize my time because maybe I only gave myself a year or two to be successful before I have to go back to
Yeah,
Omaha,
yeah, yeah.
right? And so but at the same time, I want connection, right? I want community, I want friendship, I want to date.
Yep.
But what can you do, right? Or can you support
Yeah.
me, or can you help me forward, forward what I'm trying to do? And, I talk a lot about trying to find that balance
Yeah.
because most of us, it's like, well, I'm trying to be a successful
Yeah,
so-and-so
of course.
because I want love, right? Like
Yes.
I want to be seen because I want to be admired, or I want to blah, blah, blah. So it's like, well, do you have to wait until you get that thing to then, because usually that thing isn't what's actually going to automatically make you lovable.
Yes.
But, we've been kind of told, like, keep driving, keep driving, keep
Mhm.
driving. Once you get that Oscar,
Yeah.
right? And then you
Then it's
see, right? Once people
like,
get
wait
that
a
Oscar, they
second.
fall off, the
Mhm.
map, because then they have to reconcile with the fact that, like, oh, all the things I thought my father's love,
Mhm.
my partner's love, all this admiration, all this work was going to come. And people are like, yeah,
This
it's just
didn't
an
fill that
Oscar.
hole in my heart that I thought it
Mhm.
would. And again, that comes down to loving yourself and
Mhm.
knowing yourself and working
You keep
on.
repeating that as if that's the answer to all of it.
Listen, I don't. I certainly don't pretend to feel like I know everything or anything really at all. I know my experiences and like what's been, successful for me.
How dare you keep repeating
How
the
dare I
right
repeat
answer?
an answer that feels valid to me? I got no. I'm some 31-year-old asshole. Like, I don't pretend like I have had this like great lived experience or anything like that. But I do think that, like, I know my own experience with drugs and with alcohol and with validation as well. And so I'm going to take the drugs and alcohol off there because validation's a drug in its own.
Yes.
And receiving validation from others is, holy shit, it's incredible. And when you get it, like when it hits just right,
Right.
it's a warm blanket of love and security and all this kind of
Yes.
beautiful stuff. And
I'm going to interrupt you just a
Yeah.
second. I was like, for those, I'm like, listen to this podcast, but also once it's posted visually, like you have to see all of the like hugs.
God.
I'm just like loving the visual cues that are going with this speech. Okay. So sorry. So go ahead.
No, it was my absolute security blanket. I loved it. And I just realized how dangerous that was because when I wouldn't get it, like just the impending doom of self-loathing and sadness and depression that would kind of come with that. And so it's the same thing with drugs. It's the same thing with like thinking that your career is going to give you every bit of, joy and desire and fill that hole that you thought, or a partner. Like, again, it's that I'm going to find my other half. It's like, no. Find yourself.
Yeah.
And then your person will come with it.
Yeah.
Or like the fulfillment that you're looking for will come with it. And that way, when you do win the Oscar, you're grateful for it. You're like, look at all the hard work I was able to do. I put into this.
Yes.
And it's instead of a what's next, because I have a big problem with what's next.
Yes.
Like I graduated after not expecting to go back to undergrad years ago. I finally went back and I graduated, and I had about 5 minutes where I was like from the time I got out of the classroom after that last class to my parking lot or my parking spot, I was like, this is really cool. And I got in my car, called my mom, and I was like, yeah, but like, I got to figure out like what the job is now.
Yeah.
I couldn't even for a second appreciate what I just done. That's a massive accomplishment. I couldn't even, same thing with grad school. I was like, grad school's easy. It's like, no, it's not, you jackass. Like appreciate, value what you're doing. It's so it's all those kinds of things. The more you love yourself, the more you're really going to be able to appreciate and validate your own self.
Yeah.
And you can show yourself compassion and empathy. And then you can show other people that same type of compassion and empathy.
Right. I mean, it reminds me of the idea of like celebrating the wins. And, I talk often about like the wins can be these tiny wins along the way too, right? Like you don't have to wait until you get the Oscar. You can celebrate the fact you got that phone call in the first place, celebrate that
100%.
you did the audition, celebrate
Yeah.
that you showed up on set to do that,
Yes.
particular role,
100%.
And I think that the other thing about winning that Oscar, like how much better would it be if you have the community already around you when you do it versus you've won it by yourself and now you're hoping to draw in.
Which will be very dangerous to do because you don't know what people are coming for and the reasons why.
Right. Well, then you also have to keep getting the thing.
Oh, 'cause it's all about the accolade.
Right. So it's like, oh, I attracted people, but now I have to, like you said, like the next, and I'm on that train too, right? It's like tons of accomplishments here or there. And I come to realize it's like, maybe that's exciting for someone for 5 minutes on the date. It's like, oh, I've done all these things. I have all these things. And they're like, wonderful. What are you going to do for me? Right. And when I say that, meaning, what is our relationship going to be like? It's like, okay, so you have all this education. How does that inform us being at mini golf? Or how does that inform us, like, right? Being like,
your Oscar is not going to make this putt. It's just not going to do that. It's not going to do that.
No, it's not going to do that. So I tell clients often, it's like, why would someone date you? Like, you need to answer that for yourself, right? Like, why are you interesting enough to be dated? Well, like, you say, I want this person and I want them to have all these things, but it's like, why would that person with all of those attributes want you? And that's hard, right, to hear. Because it's like...
Why not is my question. Why the hell not?
Well, no, I mean, like they need to get to that place, right? Of knowing what their inherent value and worth is, right? To be able to say, oh, I mean, even if they say, because I'm delightful and I have a great smile, it's like, okay, great. You just need to own whatever that is.
100%.
No,
and I love the idea of wins and celebrating wins. Like regardless of it. Like I love celebrating wins of getting rejected. I love that shit.
Tell me more.
So I've gotten rejected like 1 billion times. Like 1 billion times. This is whatever. But like to know every time.
Wait, is this in dating or just
in dating. 100%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Isn't that what men have to go through often?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, I think for sure. And I think some are like way more successful than others. But like,
do you not have a good line?
I don't have any kind of line. I don't. What? I don't know what a line. I don't know what any kind of a line is about anything, right? I like, if I'm on an app, I like put out like some sarcastic New England joke that makes me laugh. And it's like, you're either going to get this or you're not.
Right.
And then I can kind of, because I don't really go up to women in bars or anywhere else. Like as a sober guy, it feels really uncomfortable.
Sure.
Like consent's so huge and safety and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just kind of like, if I meet like a friend of a friend, cool. I'll absolutely, get if there's something there, cool. But largely it's more like I'm going to try and meet somebody on an app and then we'll see how it kind of goes from there.
Yeah.
But like game, like, no, I'm not trying to fool myself and be like, so like what you got to do first is go up to her, go up to this girl. You're like, yo, what's up, girl? No.
Oh God. No. All right. So you're saying celebrating the rejection.
Celebrate the rejection because it's so hard to go up to a person.
Oh God,
in the first place. Like, and I want women to go up to more guys. I want it so bad. I want it so bad.
Do men want that too?
I think that they do because here's the thing. I think women have this idea where they're like, I have a creepy stare at a guy across the bar and I want you to come and talk to me stare across the bar. And I think women think guys are morons because we don't understand the difference. But we don't understand the difference.
No, okay.
Like, well, I don't, like, you keep glancing over. Both means two different things. It's like using, it's like weather and weather. It's like, well, which one? I don't know. Which definition? You're asking me to spell it. I don't know which one you're asking me. I need to ask the definition. So, like, make a fucking move, ladies, please. Like, we would love that. I think. And
what would the move be? Because I think part of our hesitation, one, is being rejected, and we're not used to it.
Of course.
But also, what was I going to say? There's two things. It's like I don't want to be rejected. And it'll come to me. See, I already lost the second one. we were talking right before this started, and I often say 2 points, or I'll get back to that, and then I never do. So clearly,
but like I said, we're gonna end up 9 miles east, and it'll be still a great conversation.
This is me forgetting my train of thought mid thought. Like, wow, okay. The second one will come, but the first one is we're not used to being rejected. Yep. Oh, and we don't know what to say. So it's like, what do we do? What do you think works?
I think just being your authentic self works personally, and I think, like, I'm sure there are plenty of lines that you can use as a guy, like, or a girl, to go up to somebody. Lord knows I've tried. it always, I mean, it's very middling success. And a lot of that was in my youth before I like really understood like, this isn't really positive. It's not really, I'm not meeting somebody really effective or beneficial. So it's kind of what you're looking for as well in dating. But I think going up and complimenting somebody, or like, I don't think women understand. Guys don't get complimented ever.
Right.
We don't, no one, like, I know catcalling is not one, it's not the same as complimenting even in a little bit.
Yeah.
But like, women will get compliments about their looks or about their beauty and different things. And there's plenty more value that is added than just a woman's looks or beauty. But they're more used to getting complimented. Guy, we don't compliment each other. We call each other dickheads.
Sure.
Like that's like a what's up, I love you. Like,
right.
You know, I'll get on the phone with my best friend and I'll be like, what's up, bitch? And he's like, what's up, douche? And I'm like, what's up? Like, and that's just like, and then I'll be like, yo, how's your mom doing? Like literally, it's like immediately, it's like, that's just like a what's up, my guy? Like, how you doing, baby? Like, love you, bro. Like that's what that is. So if you just go out and be like, you think you look really handsome, like you look really good tonight. Like, can I buy you a drink? Offer. Buy the, you know, whatever. And then, you know, he can be like, oh, wow, it's really sweet of you, like, whatever. And then you can get into a conversation or, you know, just be like, hi, my name is Randé. It's really nice to meet you. I thought you looked great. I just want to say hi. Something that simple. It doesn't have to be this like crazy thing. If there's chemistry, there's chemistry. And if there's not, like, it's like if you start doing stand-up comedy, you're going to bomb. You're going to bomb. It's going to happen.
Right.
You got to get comfortable with the bombing in order to actually like get what you need. But that's why I love celebrating the bombing in general. Right. Because you had the courage to go.
How do you exit that when it's bomb and you're like, hi, my name, nice to meet you?
At that point, just make yourself laugh. Whatever makes you feel as good as possible. Like self-deprecation is kind of like my lane of like, I feel great in self-deprecating. Okay. It's fantastic. So like I can, you know, I remember going up to a chick and this was years ago at a bar. And I was like,
we don't use that word anymore.
What chick?
Chick.
We don't use, I went up to this young lady at a bar. And I was like, I think I complimented her shoes. Like I was just like, because I was like, compliment the shoe. I was told like compliment something that's not like her body. So I was like, oh, like I love your shoes. And she like turned around and she like looked me up and down and was like, no. And I was like, and I like turned back to her friends. And I was like, huh. I was like, all right, yo, you have like a great night though. And just like turned around and like was like, I was like, this, my guy friends are just like looking at me like that did not look like it went well. And I was like, it did not. It was so bad. Yeah. And there's like a lot of like, ooh, like good. But most people are never going to do that. I don't know what happened in that girl's day.
Right.
In that young lady's day, I'm sure she's a fantastic person.
Or not. I mean, like it's okay too.
I mean, yeah, who's to say? But like, but the thing is, like, that had nothing to do with me, right? Yeah, I'm just some asshole that she had to take her day out on because she had a tough day, or like people that are not interested in you, whatever reason it is. It has nothing to do with you not being good enough. It's just your values and their values don't line up. Right. And so they can tell that from whatever conversation you've had, or like we're all a little vain. So like if you're just not somebody's type, then you're not somebody's type. Yeah. But that doesn't say anything about you as a human. And I think we really take that on. I certainly did for a long time. Yeah. Of like, this person doesn't like me, it's because I'm worthless. Right. Or I'm not good enough for anybody. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I also realize that men, you know, I mean, I think that's why they ghost often. It's like they're not trying to hurt women. No. They're not trying to be mean. So, you know, even right. So even within that interaction, right, of saying like, hey, you know, you look nice or nice to meet you. I give men credit in the sense that I don't think that they would be like, ugh, no. Right. In that moment that I think that they would try to also help you gracefully exit if it wasn't a fit. I think for the most part they would in general. But I think a lot, again, it kind of comes down to just like a lack of awareness of emotional, like or a lack of emotional understanding from guys in general. Because like I'll talk about this with male clients about like, you know, people you're like I could call the fuck boy. And I'm like, well, walk me through that experience. Why are you like, you don't think that you're a fuck boy? Okay, cool. Like, I believe you. But give me some whatever. And usually it's their intent is to try and find somebody or they want to date, but like what they're doing does not line up. Like their actions and their words are not lining up. So someone is labeling them that, but they don't actually want to hold that label anymore. Oh, they don't want to hold it at all. What I mean is like the guy is saying things to a potential partner. Like, I'm just kind of looking to be more casual and like whatever. And then hanging out 3-4 times a week for 5 or 6 hours. That action does not represent I'm just trying to be casual. That is, I'm, you know, that to me, that shows like they think I'm different, they think I'm unique, they really enjoy spending time with me, they probably want to continue doing this. And so I think there's a lot of confusion on the guy's end because there's not the awareness of that disconnect of like actions and words and how much that can be really hurtful.
Right.
And at the same time, I think that women need to hold each other more accountable as well.
Yeah.
I hate yes friends. I hate them. Like, Tommy's such a dick. He didn't deserve you. And it's like, hold on. Let's
talk about this.
We both make mistakes. Like, everyone has a part to play. And like, again, support your friends and be there for them, but also challenge them.
Yeah.
Like, challenge your friends. Like, if Tommy was being a dick, I hope Tommy's friends are like, bro, you kind of like misplayed that. Like, you really kind of played with her a little bit. Or like, you didn't really stay true to what you said.
Sure.
So that no one's able to brush it under the rug. Like, that's why, like, if guys call someone crazy, it's like, no. Stop that. Make sure that you call them out. Like, why is she crazy? And then get them to explain, because otherwise it's just you're allowing someone to sweep someone else's actions or their own actions of unhealthy behavior under the rug and then moving on to another person that they're doing the same thing to, whether it's intentional or not.
What do you think, and maybe just one for each, and again, I know this conversation is more heteronormative, but people who are coming to you specifically around dating, like, what do you think that women are kind of blind to in terms of their own actions, and what are men kind of blind to, or where their resistance is around changing?
I think for guys, a lot of it's pride, a lot of it like bullshit male ego, of like, oh, like, a woman's gonna try to conform me into whatever, and I think like the kind of like the negative connotation that kind of comes with that, like getting like whipped or anything like that. I think there's a huge misconception on guys about what that looks like. I think women really just want a partner. I think guys are very afraid of what that looks like because they don't necessarily know exactly what comes with all of that. And that comes with the emotional ties where they're just not as educated. Yeah.
And again, potentially seeing models of like healthy models of what that also looks like.
Exactly. Like just not having that kind of any kind of real understanding of it, or even if they see it, it's foreign, it looks foreign. It's like a foreign language. Like, I need the Rosetta Stone of emotional like, interpretation, and I don't have it. Like, I have no idea. And I think women is just, again, I said this a little bit before, it's just having the patience and the understanding that like, we don't want to hide shit from you. Like, we're not trying to be like coy. A lot of it is really, we don't have the dictionary of the emotional language that you have, which is not an excuse for us to just continue to act and behave in a way that's not like valid or that's like unhealthy. We have to take that on of like, okay, like after a certain point, it's like, it's on me to learn more about this. But there's such a lack of awareness around even having to get to this, like this perspective or this emotional, vocabulary or language or understanding that we need, that, it's, we just need some time to do that. And so just kind of being more patient, I think, on the women's end. And then guys just being less ego driven and more understanding and more, more susceptible again to just like, take a second, try and interpret what's actually going on, try to really take some time with yourself and process your feelings, because it's not the norm, but it's important.
I'm finding, I mean, this is a bigger conversation, right, that this idea of potentially how men are showing up now, and I say like kind of like modern times or modern relationships, when we've had such a backlash against men in general, or male masculinity, or certainly toxic masculinity. But as you're saying, if there is still work to be done around how men might hold or be able to interpret their own emotions, their own feelings, then what does that look like when I'm not quite sure what's toxic and what's not? And so there may be in some ways like a running away from all of what might look like in terms of masculinity. And so I just don't think we've found the balance yet. And so trying to figure out, well, then how am I going to show up in a relationship where I'm not toxic, where I am respectful, but also I still want to be a man in the relationship.
100%.
And I think part of the modeling that I've seen in some ways in the world, or in terms of media, it's poor modeling in the sense of we're so often dismissive of men, like they're always like stupid and they don't know how to fix things, or like they're always kind of like the butt of the joke. And so it's like, well, how do you partner with someone that we've been laughing at for the last, I don't know, let's say decade, and then saying, well, you're wrong for who you are, you're wrong for your, your toxic behavior. But then we desire partnership with them. right? But we haven't necessarily, as a society, in terms of Western society, maybe constructed a new model of what that is. Because I think at the same time, women are often looking for still that old model, right? Of partnership, of maybe leadership, of like protection and security and finances. And yet we've been kind of actively dismantling who men are. And then we're like, well, where are all the men? It's like, well, you dismantle them, right? And in some ways, I think collectively we haven't built them up, right?
Yeah.
And then on the other side, as women, we've actually taken on all of that, right? Like we've become our own masculine, like we've become both and.
Yeah.
And there's something very powerful about that. But it's like, well, then how do I release some of that power, actually share it or surrender it? Which, can be a problematic word, but I think it's a very necessary one in this conversation, or in a future conversation. But how do we then reshare that platform?
Yeah.
We're asking for partnership, but it's like I've partnered with myself in all ways. And then I'm like, there's this little drawer for you to like inhabit. Like, again, a man who's really a man doesn't want just your drawer.
Yeah.
Like they want to actually share in your life. And so bigger conversation for later, but I'm just putting that out there in the world. So people are like, yes, interesting.
I won't really speak to a lot of that, but I will say one thing, because I know it's meant for a bigger conversation.
Yeah.
Which is, we just have to be communicative. Like with anything. Like I am a financially privileged straight white guy from the suburbs of Connecticut. I knew like 4 Black people growing up in general. Didn't understand really any culture except like the very white suburban culture that I was morphed, I was like kind of kept in, right?
Yeah.
And moving out to, LA was a huge culture change and shock. It was almost a shock, because it's just things are so different and people's perspectives were so different. And so my ability, and the one thing I'm really grateful for, is having a lot of friends from all walks of life, and their ability to not educate me in a sense of like you must tell me like what this was like, but just have conversations. And if I make a comment that feels, or that they interpret as ignorant, or that they interpret poorly, to not jump down my throat about it, and to be like, hey man, like that made me feel uncomfortable. And then me be like, whoa, I'm so sorry. Like that's not what I intended, but like, can you just explain why, and so having that conversation and me being able to understand and get a better understanding, and then educating myself outside of that situation further. I think it's a similar thing with men and women of like, let men make these mistakes in saying something that somebody might take offensively, or something someone might feel is like sexist or ignorant or, possessive or controlling, whatever it is. And then just have the conversation, not from a place of shaming, but rather from a place of like, okay, I don't think that you're the type of person that actually would want to hurt somebody or hurt me in this situation, but you kind of did. And so that way you're not, the person's automatically not going to be defensive as hell and just kind of have their guard up and be like, well, now I'm ready to go to war. And like, let's just, be combative. And, instead they can actually kind of go in with like I never meant to make you feel bad. But it's that like same, and it's just, I feel this way. Yeah. Be curious, not judgmental. Thank you, Ted Lasso, but I know it's from Walt Whitman. But thank you, Ted Lasso.
On that note, stay curious. We're at the end of this. Went by really fast.
Wow.
I don't even know if maybe I have questions, but I might have to bring you back for more. I know we went through some of them.
Yes.
But tell people how they can get a hold of you, how they can find you.
Absolutely. So my website is thetherapybro.com. I'm also on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook.
Wow. Wait, with the same handle?
Same handle, _therapy_bro. Okay. So I'm most prevalent, I think, and you probably reach me easiest on Insta. In general, I have, if you want sessions or anything like that, that's all on my website. And I'm working on like a men's class or just people's classes as well, to kind of like do and different workbooks and stuff that are kind of in the making of all sorts and kinds and things like that.
Yeah.
But,
and you work in terms of dating and life coaching as well as therapy, but you also specialize in addiction.
Yeah. So my therapy, I have my master's in clinical psychology with the specialization within addiction, and then that's its own thing. And then on the side, I have the life and relationship coaching and dating coaching, any kind of thing within that realm.
Right.
And I'm happy to take on clients within either realm,
Yes.
whatever speaks to you
Beautiful.
more. Yeah.
Thank you. And I want to let everyone know, like, the reason why I asked Chris to come in is that I've worked with him. I, am going through my own journey in terms of dating, and it's been so helpful to talk to someone, from a male perspective, to help me navigate some of the pitfalls, like the all in and the doing everything for everyone. Chris said something around efforting to me, and making a list of how I effort. And it was just so illuminating and so helpful. So again, I'm having him on, and spreading, his goodness to anyone who is interested in working with him, because I just found him so incredibly helpful. So thank you so much.
Well, that just made my day. Thank you. That's very sweet of you to say, and I'm glad that some of the stuff that we talked about.
Oh
was
yeah,
really
absolutely,
beneficial.
absolutely. And
Makes me happy.
also I just had like a good time laughing with you.
It was a good time. Yeah. And so is this. So
yes, and so is this.
I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, my
Thank you so
pleasure.
much.
My pleasure. All right. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for everyone who's listening. And again, we will see you next week, or I will. So I'll see you next week. Take care. Thank you so much for listening. As always, please share, comment, and like so we can grow our community and bring more love to those you love. Great reviews mean a great deal to our work, so take a few minutes and write us a love letter today. Our hearts appreciate every word. Tune in next week for another episode.